Hello everybody, this is Nick from Bruto Bello and Carillon Audio Blog. I just wanted to show you something that I've been playing with recently, and it's a pretty fun little thing. Essentially, I recently downloaded some sound packs from DJ Tech Tools, and they had some interesting elements in them that were melodic elements that went along with what you were playing in real time, so you can kind of have some fun and perform basically on your pad controller. You know, I use the Ableton push, other people use trigger fingers, whatever. Excuse me. So what I did is I stole some of those elements, I liberated them, borrowed them, if you will, and threw them in here, and I just wanted to show you essentially what my take on it was, and maybe this will inspire you guys to come up with your own version of this. But essentially I've got a very basic drum rack here. Some straightforward stuff, and this is usually the way I would use the drum rack, is just drop some single samples in there. But I decided to throw in a hi-hat, and what I did, you can see here, I added an arpeggiator plug-in, which is playing eighth notes with a gate of 59%. It's basically playing my eighth note hi-hat pattern for me. And that whole time I'm just holding down that hi-hat note. So it makes it a little easier when you're playing stuff. Maybe you can hold one note, play the rest of the pattern around that, and then it frees up some other fingers to do different rhythms and more complex stuff on top of that. So what I did is I created a little arpeggiator that goes along with that. Now, excuse me. Now what I did on this one is I dropped in a Chord plugin, because anytime you play a note within a drum rack, it's only playing one note. So that one note is now going into the MIDI Chord plugin, or excuse me, it's an effect, it's not necessarily a plugin, and that is adding a minor third and a fifth above that, and even an octave. And of course you've got different velocities down here that you can alter. So it's basically playing a minor chord, which is then running through an arpeggiator, which goes up and down. And you can have fun changing this around. That's playing 16th notes with that 45% gate. And that sounds like this. Whoops. Now if you can listen, if you can hear that, you can hear that there's a pause, there's a break. It's doot 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 with a pause, and then hitting the high note and then coming back. Excuse me. The way that I've built that in there is essentially it's playing the first note, which is the root, then a minor third, then the fifth, and then it's playing an octave, but that octave's velocity is very low as it can go. Then within the rack itself, it's actually playing the synth, this little simpler right here. I've gone in to my velocity chain, and I've said only play notes where a velocity is above 56. Now because I'm playing with my computer keyboard, everything's at one velocity going into it, and everything, you can see it's, every time it plays this note, it's playing at the velocity of 1, and because this rack is no longer responding to anything below the velocity of 54, it basically, and it gives you silence. So I'm able to kind of create like somewhat of a step sequencer, and depending on where this note is placed, or I can place more, it'll change that. So right now, if I put it down between the third and the seventh, or if I put it between the root and the third, and of course I can do the same thing with other ones. That kind of sounds silly. So let's go ahead and actually let's go like this. I don't know what it's going to end up sounding like. I'm going to give it an octave as well here. Not exactly a step sequencer, but a fun way to play. So as you can see, kind of a fun way to, you just hold one pad down and it's giving you a little riff. So I did the same type of thing on the bass here. It gets a little wonky when your rhythm's kind of off like that, although sometimes it can create interesting things like that where it almost feels like it's a shuffle or something like that. Then I've also created a couple other elements right here, these chord melodies. Now what these are a MIDI effect rack with two separate chains. The first chain goes through a chord effect, basically creating that minor chord again, and I've altered the velocity so that it's not so loud, essentially. And then the second chain is running through a randomizer and then a scale plugin, which is keeping it within that C minor scale. I've done the same thing over here, it's just that this is a different chord. So the first chain is running into this chord plugin with different notes here, so it's coming out as a minor chord, the 4 chord essentially, for you those out there who understand theory and understand what I'm talking about. But essentially what it allows me to do is do some cool So as you can see, I'm basically playing just a couple fingers there, but it's starting to sound like some interesting stuff, some interesting chord stuff is happening, some melody on top of that chord, and then of course if I get creative and play it all together, you know. I apologize, I'm not used to using the computer keyboard. But essentially you can see what that allows you to do with just a drum rack, and to kind of create a performance little instrument that allows you to have some control over the notes that are being played, the chords that are being played, what key you're in, the rhythm, and of course the best thing about all of this stuff that's using arpeggiators is that anytime I change the master tempo, this is going to follow it. So it'll just re-trigger that with a new tempo, which is very handy. So hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully this gives you some food for thought, and maybe you guys can come up with something interesting. If anyone comes up with something that they want to share with me, definitely send me a link, shoot me an email. If you haven't subscribed to my blog, follow me. Follow my blog, Carillon Audio, and you can get more tips like this. Follow my YouTube channel, and you'll find other videos like this as well. And hopefully this helps. Anyway, keep making good music, and thanks a lot for watching. Bye.